And I now would like to warmly welcome our witnesses for our second panel today. We have everybody online, so we are missing you in person, but we're glad that you could join us in person. So we have Mr. Herbert G. Goubel, Emeritus Professor of Economics. Welcome. We have Hélène Mérande, Professeure à l'Université de Sherbrooke. Bienvenue. Professor Mérande.
Welcome, Professor Mérande. And we have
Chevary, businessman and owner. Bienvenue à vous aussi. OK. On commence avec...
Welcome. So we will start with 5 minutes for each of you for your opening statements before we proceed to a round of questions. So I would now like to invite
Goubel to begin for 5 minutes. Professor Goubel, your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I traveled around the country for 2 years with the Finance Committee, so I'm very familiar with the atmosphere. Most fundamentally, I welcome public hearings as we are having now on designs of our immigration policy. I hope it will give the deserved publicity and discussion in Parliament that has been needed. On a personal note, despite my numerous academic publications in the field of immigration economics, I was never asked to participate in the discussions around the setting of official immigration targets and selection criteria. Nor as a member of Parliament from 93 to 97 was I ever asked to vote on these issues. Only once did the minister tell me privately to keep up my research and publications and hold his feet to the fire. I believe that in greatest need of change are policies determining the number and selection criteria of temporary residents who are admitted to work or study in Canada. Foreigners who fill seasonal or temporary labor shortages in the economy should be admitted in numbers at frequent, regular intervals and set by a parliamentary committee. There should be no foreign students attending elementary and secondary schools. They do not benefit Canada and burden our schools' resources. Foreign students should be admitted to attend Canadian colleges, universities, and graduate schools. They bring valuable benefits to the institutions and economy, especially to the extent that they pay tuition. Foreign students who have completed degrees in these institutions should no longer be preferred candidates for permanent resident status. The government should adopt policy to ensure that temporary workers and students leave Canada after their visas have expired. Now, on a separate issue, parents and grandparents should be granted only super visas, as they had been practiced before the changes initiated by the government in 2016. It makes eminent sense. If a foreigner does not want to come without his parents, he just should not come. The system dealing with asylum seekers needs to be reformed, possibly fundamentally, much as it is in other Western democracies. Such reforms may include the development of ways in which the backlog of applications for refugees status is reduced. I'm fully aware that this is one of the most difficult problems our foreign policy faces. And there are no easy solutions. There are trade-offs that involve fundamental human values, the suffering of immigrants, but also the suffering of Canadians who find their housing, their access to medical
1 minute
care.
left, Professor Grubel.
Pardon me?
1 minute left.
Fine. Thank you, madam. I'm done.
Thank you, Professor. You are. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, c'est à vous, Professeur.
It's now over to you, Professor Meyrand. You have 5 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today, and thank you for the work that you're doing on this committee. In my research as a law professor over the last 10 years, I've been able to look at how certain rules, which were adopted to preserve the integrity of the Canadian immigration system and to make it more efficient, have in reality had the opposite effect to these objectives, as well as negatively affecting the protection of migrants' rights in Canada. The aim of my presentation today is to convince you that introducing more rules, simply to send a strong political message that we're doing something to tackle abuses of the immigration system, often fails to have the desired effect, and that we need to consider these impacts more holistically to ensure that new rules do not place even greater pressure on other sectors, in other words, shifting the problem, and contribute to the insecurity of both migrants and Canadian communities. Allow me to give you an example using the famous Safe Third Country Agreement. I know that you've discussed it many times. I could give you some other examples as well during the question period, if you would like. Firstly, I would like to emphasize that I agree with a number of issues that have been raised by other speakers regarding human rights violations against migrants returned to the United States under the Safe Third Country Agreement. And the situation has been particularly worrying since January 2025. The government should address this as a matter of priority and suspend the application of the agreement. But I know this is a controversial subject for some members of the committee. But what I'd like you to retain as a message is that on top of those issues linked to human rights for migrants, there's also an impact on the efficiency of the system and the feeling that communities living on the border have with regard to their security. And that's particularly important given the linked to the committee's consultation, rather. Since the agreement was extended to the entire land border and Roxham Road was closed, and we've heard that previously, migrants have turned to other routes to enter Canada. So on paper, the statistics available on the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada's website regarding irregular entries have decreased. But in reality, clandestine entries, that is, people who do not present themselves to the RCMP, as was the case with Roxham Road, have increased, a fact that's been documented by the RCMP and reported on by several media outlets. I've started a research project with a PhD student documenting how the Safe Third Country Agreement and increased border security are having significant humanitarian and security impacts on the community, the border community of the Quadikuk RCM in the Estrie region. Our preliminary data indicates that there's been an increase in illegal crossings in the region, and maybe you've seen this in the media, and there was even a person who was found dead in the woods. That was reported in March, but the person died last year. That was never the case before. And so this situation is putting pressure on local resources, and it's also creating a sense of fear among the local population. Canada's unilateral removal of the 14-day period to locate migrants through BC-12, and I know you've heard about this at committee, will only exacerbate this phenomenon. So this is a glaring example of an attempt to reduce pressure on the asylum system and protect the integrity of the system, which in reality adds pressure in an asymmetrical way. So it's putting pressure... So the pressure from these federal rules is being felt on the rural municipality in the local area, and it's also having an impact on the resources, the security that are being put in place at the border and in border communities, while at the same time increasing insecurity for communities and migrants. Several speakers have highlighted the bureaucratic issues, the lack of coordination. We heard about that in the previous panel, and the delays in processing applications. And I think that these here are the real issues that need to be addressed. You have 1 minute left. Perfect, thank you. For asylum seekers, the solution does not, in my opinion, lie in increasing the grounds for rejecting their applications, as the government is attempting to do. And that was the case with C-12, but it was also the case previously with other amendments. So in my opinion, and in that of several other stakeholders, it lies in reducing application processing times and creating alternative migration pathways. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much, Professor Meran. And now it's over to Mr. Chevalier. You have 5 minutes. Hello, thank you. Patrick Chevalier from the Magdalen Islands. I am a businessman and have been for over 30 years, and I'm here today to speak about the Magdalen Islands. It's a small archipelago in the middle of the St. Lawrence, the Gulf of St. Lawrence in eastern Canada. Beautiful islands. It should be on your bucket list for travel, and we hope to see you here. And the day that you come to visit us in the Magdalen Islands, you're going to see, as you come in on the boat, that we have almost no more Magdalen Islands workers who are working on the boats. The people who are working on the boats all come from outside. You'll also be able to come and eat our crab and our lobster. It's very tasty, but now it's Mexicans who are processing crab and lobster on the island because there are no more Magdalen Islanders who work in the processing plants. And you'll see that our Tim Hortons is full because it is the key social hub on the island, and you'll also see the number of workers who've come in from elsewhere, including the Philippines, since 2023 to help us continue to serve customers. Why am I saying all this? Well, it's because we live on an island. We are isolated. We are far, we're not even rural. We're out in the middle of the ocean. So we're very far from everything. We have an aging population. We have very few young people left in our schools. We're seeing the population is aging like across Quebec, and there's a statistic that's interesting for the Magdalen Islands. For every 100 people who retire, there's only 43 to replace them, so we are losing people. The other reason that I'm here today is also it's a personal reason because I mentioned the Tim Hortons when you come and get your coffee in a couple of months. If you come in the fall, the Tim Hortons won't exist anymore. The Tim Hortons is going to be closed because with all the laws that have changed in Canada since September 2024, it means that our Filipino workers and our international workers, well, we can't renew their permits. So it's just a Tim Hortons. It's just the Magdalen Islands. It's not much, but for the people here, it's important. It's really a social hub on the islands, the place that everybody comes. And so that's for the people of the Magdalen Islands. If we look at some of the other restaurants on the islands, most restaurants are closed several days a week because there aren't enough employees. There are also a number of foreign workers who work in the co-ops or in the daycares and in our healthcare system. And in my field, I would say that there are very, very few people who are ready to work in my businesses in the restaurants. We have a number of Filipinos who've come with their families, with their children. The children are in school. These are families who have open visa contracts where they work for us, and that allows us to offer incredible service to our clients. I think that particular attention has to be paid to very rural and remote regions. And, the Magdalen Islands are really in a particular situation. We're a small island in the middle of the ocean, but other rural regions have the same problem, finding people who want to work in our businesses. And we are having a hard time finding local people to work in our businesses. In some cases, it's inexistent. And so we have no choice but to bring in temporary foreign workers to help us. It's unfortunate because as a businessman, I've invested a lot of money in bringing these people to work in my businesses. And now today, all that money that I've invested over the last 10, 20, 30 years, and here we invested for 3 years. You have 1 minute left, Mr. Chevalier. Our workers have to leave, and at the end of the day, we have to close the business. That's one specific situation that I want to share with you today, and there are many similar situations across Quebec and probably across Canada, but I'm not familiar with everywhere, but I'm familiar with what's happening here in the Magdalen Islands. So that's why I'm here today to speak to our situation, and it's a situation where many other business people on the islands are seeing the same problems. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chevalier. We will now start our rounds of questions. The first round will begin with 6 minutes for Mr. Menegakis. Mr. Menegakis, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for appearing before us today. I'd like to start my questions with you, Professor Grubel. Do you believe that the Liberal government considered the impact on things like healthcare, housing, and jobs prior to letting in the large number of immigrants that they have allowed in over the past decade?
I wouldn't know, but it turns out whatever they did, it was very bad for Canada.
Would you agree that when there are diseconomies of scale when letting in so many people at once, and the costs may actually be higher than if immigration was done in a slower, more sustainable manner?
Exactly. I mean, it turns not into a positive, it turns for the country as a whole as a negative. I have great sympathy for gentlemen like we heard from the island that there is a labor shortage, but if we bring in too much of anything, suddenly you will have adjustment problems. And it was more than adjustment problems. It was killing our economy.
Well, that you make a very valid point there, sir. Do you think it has an impact on the ability of newcomers that are coming to Canada to be able to have successful outcomes when there's so many of them coming? And of course, it creates a problem with finding jobs and finding a residence to live, and getting health care and so forth. Do you think it's an environment that is conducive for them to be able to succeed in Canada as newcomers to our country?
Well, I'm not in contact with immigrants, but I read a lot about what is going on in the economy, and I hear that the recent immigrants are a strong lobby for reducing the rate of immigrants.
That's
because
right.
They are the ones at the front to feel this problem, as well as our own less skilled young people whose jobs are being taken.
Do you think that the government should be in the business of providing accommodations, housing for example, asylum seekers and refugees and newcomers coming? Should the government?
Well, my commentary on this controversy that we're continuing here and was going on before with the asylum seekers is that the more benefits we offer, the more we will have asylum seekers who may or may not have legitimate claims, but are getting benefits from doing so.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, thank you for that.
A famous economist, Milton Friedman, colleague of mine when I was teaching in Chicago, said it is incompatible to have the welfare state and free immigration. And we, in the last 10 years, have been moving more and more towards free immigration. And that prediction that it is impossible, we're paying for.
Along those lines, sir, I don't know if you have heard, but the government ran into quite a bit of controversy because they were booking hotels and putting people in hotels across the country, just housing them there at exorbitant costs. Now, to get away from that controversy, they created a new program, and recently we found out they gave the city of Ottawa $40 million to outright purchase a hotel so they can house these people. So they're not renting anymore. They house them now in a hotel that is owned by the city of Ottawa to house these people. Yesterday, for example, I read an article of another $27.35 million that was given to Pickering, the town of Pickering here in Ontario, to do the same thing, to purchase a hotel there. So $40 million to Ottawa, $27.35 million to Pickering. That's only two locations that we know of where they've done that so far that we know of. They've been very reluctant to provide, to be transparent and give us a list of how many municipalities they've given money to. What do you have to say about that, sir?
You have 1 minute left.
Well, most generally, I think it will all be said in the book that I'm writing. I cry for you, Canada. I came in 1972, having a professorship with a tenure in the United States because I love Canada and I love Vancouver. I'm now almost sorry for this country. I'm glad I'm 92.
I'll close by saying this. Thank you for appearing before us today. I hope that when I'm 92 years old, somebody will ask me to come and present here if I'm fortunate enough to get there. And thank you for your service to Canada as a member of Parliament. Appreciate your presence here today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Professor Grubel, and thank you, Mr. Menegakis. Next, we have 6 minutes for Ms. Sodi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'd like to ask my first question to Mr. Chevary. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But in Budget 2025, the federal government introduced a new initiative which is over the next 2 years will provide permanent status to 33,000 workers in rural areas who have already applied for permanent residence. Can you tell this committee how this measure will support rural economies such as that of your riding to ensure that businesses can keep running and growing opportunities for local communities?
Well, de notre côté ici, nous autres,
Well, here we're in Quebec, and in Quebec, if you want permanent residency, it's much more complicated to get it because of local laws. The French language is very difficult to learn for people who are not, from a francophone country who don't know French, and so that in our case, we have employees from the Philippines who speak the language from their country and who speak English and who've been learning French for the last 3 years in the Magdalen Islands. The program that you're putting in place for people like our workers, it requires much more time than just taking a few French lessons and applying for permanent residency. And it's time that we don't have now because the programs have been cut, the laws have changed, and our workers have to go home.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for.
sorry,
go ahead.
It might be good elsewhere in Canada, but for Quebec, it's very difficult because of the French language.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Dr. Grubel, I'd like to go to you for just a second. Recent data tells us that this year, international student arrivals are down by 75%. Temporary worker arrivals are down by 71%, and asylum claims are down by 64%. These numbers are a result of policies that have been put in place by Canada's new government to reduce, stabilize, and balance immigration levels across different programs. From an economics perspective, can you tell us how this change will help bring stability and future long-term predictability to Canada's economy and labor market?
Well, we got ourselves in the mess. How we're going to get out of it is going to be very difficult. I don't know what the right and optimum number is, but what we're doing here is the beginning of something that should take place every year. You ask both people who are employers, who want more workers, and those who understand that every time you bring a family of 5 from a Mideastern country, they will put a burden on housing, hospitals, everything that government provides for free, and they impose a burden on the average Canadian. We are in effect asked through our burden to subsidize the people who hire these workers. We need to have a discussion and have a trade-off between these two benefits.
Professor Grubel, you've also argued that Canada's housing affordability crisis is directly linked to immigration and that housing was stable at lower immigration levels. I know you mentioned a little bit about it in your previous answer, but now that we have reduced the numbers and we've done the consultations, do you believe that this is a step in the right direction for housing markets?
Of course. How could it not be? It will be very difficult to adjust. once we're in the mud, it's very hard to get out. You won't come overnight. And let me tell you, people who are politicians who are promising that they would change the affordability crisis are either lying or ignorant. You look at the level of prices in Canada for the last 50 years, there never has been a decrease in the price level because the Bank of Canada aims for increasing prices every 2% every year. And the same thing will be houses are unlikely to fall significantly. The only solution is more housing being built.
Perfect. Thank you for your answer.
1 minute.
Professor Mayrand, recently the federal government announced a new temporary public policy to facilitate short-term work permits to temporary workers already working in Quebec while they await permanent residence. Can you explain to this committee how the immigration system in Quebec differs from that in the rest of Canada? And what recommendations do you have for Quebec's system and how it can be improved in collaboration with the government of Canada?
I think those types of temporary working permits could help to actually make sure that refugees or refugee claimants have an opportunity to work while they are in awaiting for the decision. I believe, however, that the problem is mainly of the delays. So in terms of other people who intervene in this committee, the delays are so long, so they need to work because the delays are really, really long while they await for their decision. This is the case in Quebec, and this is the case in the rest of Canada. So I think it's to allow temporary permits. It's a good way as a temporary measures, but I think the core of the problems are the delays.
Merci, Professeur Mayrand.
Thank you, Professor Mayrand. We're way over time.
Maintenant, on a 6 minutes pour...
Now we have 6 minutes for Mr. Deschênes. Over to you.
You have to unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Very happy to hear an accent from the Magdalen Islands here at the Immigration Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chevalier, for being here. Since we're talking about what's been happening with workers and temporary foreign workers, yesterday we learned in the economic update that the number of temporary foreign workers in Canada was reduced by 71% from the beginning of 2024 to today. And at the Bloc Québécois, we have always supported a tightening of temporary immigration, but it can't be done any which way, and it has to take into account regional needs. And here, the Liberal government has made a couple of announcements in March 13th, for example, by saying that in rural areas, they would allow all temporary foreign workers to renew their permits for 1 year. And for a 1 year period, they're going to allow in rural areas an increase from 10 to 15% for those who wish to stay. So I'd like to hear you, Mr. Chevalier, on how these measures, which are, in theory, are designed to help you, have they really helped you? Has it allowed you to ensure that your Tim Hortons can continue to operate? Well, thank you very much for the question. The answer is no. We were very happy on March 13th when the government gave us an extra 12 months to find a solution to see if there'd be a way to improve things for rural areas. But what the government didn't announce that same day is at the same time families couldn't stay. And so a worker who's been here for 2 or 3 years with their family had the right to stay for an additional 12 months, as the government said, but their family has to go back. And, these people left everything behind to come work in Canada, to learn French, to help grow our economy and contribute to society. And now we're telling them they have to go home or stay without their families. And that doesn't work. They're not going to stay, these people, because, these are human beings here. And your situation, Mr. Chevalier, at the Tim Hortons, how many of your employees are temporary foreign workers? Right now, foreign workers represent 67% of workers with closed permits. And that's because of the simplified processes. Yes, in 2023, when our workers came in, we were able to hire 4 under the federal program. And then with the provincial program, it was a simplified program, which allowed us to hire the number of workers that we needed. And, it depends on our financial ability as well. So I hired 8 others. So that's 12 temporary foreign workers. And then the following year, we had 4 more arrive. So we were able to, really have a good, strong team to keep the business going. The business had been half closed for years because we hadn't had local workers. So with the new measures that were announced in March, did you make renewal requests for your workers? I can't make renewal requests because the workers who are here right now know they're going to leave because they can't keep their families here. And those who are alone, well, we're above the threshold of 15%. And so these measures won't help me and many other companies in Quebec because, we're at 40, 50, 60% because of the simplified program. So it's a good public policy would have been to allow the families and the partners to renew their permits, even if the worker themselves could only renew for a year. Yes, that would have helped if some of those rules could be changed for rural areas like ours or for, other remote areas. I've been listening about what people are saying about money that's being wasted. And I can understand the government's frustration in wanting to make immigration cuts, but in remote areas like ours, we don't see that situation. We have a labor shortage, a lack of local employees. And so whether it be in supermarkets, whether it be in malls, pharmacies, our processing plants, restaurants, we all have the same problem. Locally, we don't have the labor force in remote areas. For those who are watching and who aren't familiar with the Magdalen Islands, could you explain why the situation in the Magdalen Islands is unique? Well, we're a small island. We're a small island with about 12,000 inhabitants. In the summer, it goes up to 40, 50, 60,000 inhabitants for the summer season for about 8 months during the summer holidays. So it's completely a different world during the summer. But in the rest of the year, we have an aging population. We have a lot of retirees who work. We have very few young people in the labor market because there are fewer and fewer young people in the Magdalen Islands because we've seen those numbers go down for the last 30 years. And then we have an issue with unemployment in the Magdalen Islands. It's something we don't talk about very much, but there are many small businesses that open in the summer. And, those are unemployment factories in a way because people do, 14 weeks and then they go home to rest. And then, unfortunately, there's work out there, but people don't want it. But businesses like mine that are open all year can't find local labor because we have an unemployment system. You just have a few seconds left, Mr. Chevalier. What's going to happen with your Tim Hortons? Well, we're going to be forced to close. We're going to be forced to close as our contracts end in August, September. We're going to have to close the restaurant, which will become just one more dead business in our village. Thank you, Mr. Chevalier. And thank you, Mr. Deschênes.
Ends our first round, and now we start with our second round. Our second round begins with Mr. Davies for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Professor Grubel, when I was looking at your body of work, your impressive body of work over the years, it wasn't until later after I'd read some of what you've been doing that you were a member of Parliament. So that was a bit of a surprise to me, but I'm happy to engage with you today. In your policy history, you have tended to focus on fiscal responsibility, labor market competition, infrastructure constraints, and selective economically driven immigration. I'm from the Niagara region in Ontario, and we see firsthand how the pressures that you have written about, from housing shortages, strained infrastructure, and employment balancing labor needs with stagnant wages in key sectors. We've lived that lived reality raises a couple of fundamental questions, but I wonder if you could walk the committee through your framework for assessing what you refer to as net fiscal impact of immigration, and what variables matter most, and how should policymakers interpret those results?
Well, the book you're referring to was published by the Fraser Institute, somewhat reluctantly. A co-author, an American who lived a long time in Ottawa. It started off, and we got our attention was drawn to the following fact, that when immigrants enter Canada, Statistics Canada finds out that they have below income that is below Canadian workers of the same age and education. And this low income persists for the next 20 years, and it never goes completely away. I don't know whether it's discrimination, whatever it is, that's a fact. And it was getting, when we were writing our book, worse every 5 years. Statistics Canada showed that it's gotten worse. At the same time, as they settle in Canada, they're entitled to all the government benefits that we offer. And as a result of this, we have progressive income taxation, so that these immigrants with the low incomes are getting all the benefits which are not tied to income, while the taxes they pay are considerably lower because their incomes are lower. And we calculated that this was in the 80s, several $1 billion worth of costs that immigrants impose on the rest of Canada that is never mentioned. And even then it was disregarded. We were being hated for pointing out these kinds of things. People go, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong. The numbers are there. Nobody refuted them. But of course, the public media didn't like the idea because the mood in Canada at the time was still, immigrants cannot do any wrong. We need more and more and more. The question is, do we all want to subsidize the small businessmen in the world? That's an issue that we ought to discuss. At the time that I was active in writing, these issues were never discussed. We ought to have people from both sides. Let me say.
So, Professor, I have limited time, so I wonder if...
Yes, okay. So, I expected you to interrupt me, otherwise I can't keep going for the next hour.
Professor, critics say your approach may underweight long-term and second-generation benefits. How do you respond to that, and how should governments balance short-term fiscal impacts with long-term economic gains?
Well, that is another question that we have to look at.
1 minute.
Elon Musk is not typical. We have a lot of, in the longer run, all that Keynes said. So I don't know.
In your view, how should Canada determine the right level of immigration each year? What economic indicators or capacity constraints should guide in those decisions?
Have a group of people like this here, listen to those small businessmen, farmers, even the big companies, the big manufacturing, love cheap labor, cheap imported labor. We listen to that and listen to guys like me who say that if you always have cheap labor available, society has no incentives to adopt labor-saving devices.
Thank you, Professor Grubel, and thank you, Mr. Davies. That is time. Next, maintenant, on a 2 minutes et demie pour Monsieur.
Now we have 2.5 minutes for Mr. Deschênes, please. Mr. Deschênes. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A question for Madame Méran. Referring to asylum seekers, in the economic update, the government said that the number of asylum seekers has dropped by 64% from the beginning of 2024 to the beginning of 2026. You've mentioned clandestine entries, which appear to have gone up. That's something that we're hearing on the ground when we meet with groups that are working with communities. What's your vision? Do you think that the 64% is really as described? Is that really the case? Well, the research that we're doing right now in Coaticook shows that, no, there are data that are not being counted. So people go and hide. So, you know, for example, if you look back at Roxham Road, there were people coming in at one specific place, but people crossed the border and then reported to the RCMP and then made their asylum claim. So what we're seeing now is since 2023, we're seeing that numbers are going down, and numbers are going to continue going down because all of the restrictions that we're putting in place that make it harder for people to make an asylum claim in Canada means that there are people who are choosing other means. It also encourages criminality. So people who are going to profit from this situation to bring people across the border. And we're seeing, you know, still preliminary data, but we're documenting what's happening on the ground and how this is being put into action. So in the Coaticook area, it's a border region where there had never been this kind of situation before. So, you know, they're starting to see clothes, backpacks that are being left. There are drones that are moving across the border and keeping an eye out. There are pamphlets that have been handed out to the population asking them to report any suspicious situation. That didn't happen before. So there has been an increase in the number of people crossing there. Are they going to make asylum claims? Well, maybe not, because you know, we're making it harder and harder to do that. And so the problem is just being moved elsewhere. And Mr. Deschênes, I'm sorry. Your 2.5 minutes are already up. I'm sorry. We now have Mr. Joseph. I'm sorry to have missed you. So you have 5 minutes for your questions, please. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You know, I'm a new member of this committee, so you know, you forgot me. It's okay. Don't worry about it. So I'd like to speak to Madame Méran because she spoke about immigration. She spoke about collaboration between Quebec and the federal government. We know that Ottawa has a shared immigration responsibility with Quebec. How could better coordination between Quebec and Ottawa improve processing times and the ability to attract talent? Well, certainly better collaboration would improve the situation and processing times. It's a bit like taxes. We have the privilege in Quebec of having a double tax system. So it's the same thing. We have a privilege in Quebec when it comes to immigration to have two levels with the certificates of exemption and the permits at the federal level. So there are certainly possibilities for additional processing delays because of that situation. I know people who've chosen to move outside of Quebec because of the delays that we see in Quebec right now. So it's, well, yes, I think that there needs to be better collaboration. There's political interest to see how that can be done. I know that Quebec is very protective of its jurisdiction in immigration, but I think that better collaboration to reduce those delays is a good idea. Improving, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the beginning of your question. No, I just asked the question, how could we improve collaboration? How could we improve it? Well, it's coordinating programs. Quebec puts in place its own programs, its own criteria. It the issues that Mr. Chevalier spoke of are also linked to issues that were not created by the federal government and are out of the jurisdiction of this committee. So how do we improve it? Well, maybe more discussions between the federal and provincial governments, but again, this is distinct jurisdiction. And then, of course, there's also the political side of things. The federal government probably doesn't want to go and interfere in provincial jurisdiction and impose a certain way of doing things. So it's not an easy question. That's why I spoke about collaboration and shared responsibility in immigration with Ottawa and Quebec. I'll now move to Mr. Chevalier. Hello. So, in listening to you, we've understood that it's essential that temporary foreign workers continue to arrive on your beautiful island. Yes, absolutely. Yes, we absolutely need to make sure that on my island, a remote area, it's not the same thing as on the mainland. We don't have the same issues in other rural areas or in big cities. It's another world. It's another world. Okay, another question for you, Mr. Chevalier. Because in certain regions, there are demographic issues that are impacting the number of people coming in. What can we do? Well, in remote areas, the laws have to be different. The government would need to come in with a grandfather clause, if you will. We were able to do something with immigration. We were able to get people to work. We were able to keep our businesses open, and to have a grandfather clause that would allow us to continue what we're doing would really help us. Because in remote areas, we don't have the same supports that exist in big cities and elsewhere. And in terms of the Magdalene Islands, I also come from an island in northwestern Haiti, and on that island we don't have the same level of employment. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Alexis for being the member for that beautiful island. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to both of you.
2 minutes left. We have 1 minute left for Mr. Ho and 1 minute for Ms. Sodi. Mr. Ho.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Professor Grubel, Canada's productivity has been weakening over the last Liberal decade. Investment is fleeing the country like we've never seen before, and this is taken out of the Liberal costly credit card budget from 2025. So my question is, can radically increasing immigration levels at rates like the Liberals have done in the past few years compensate for poor productivity, weak business investment, and low capital formation?
Why, to the contrary, it reduces per capita income unless they increase productivity, and we don't have the productivity. And the productivity is, when California reduced the inflow of Mexican agricultural worker into the valley, everybody said it will kill California. Well, it didn't. Instead of tomatoes being picked by hand, they developed machines to pick the tomatoes. And the tomatoes didn't taste as good as the ones that they had before. So what did they do? They modified genetically the tomatoes so they could stand being picked and tasted as good as the ones we had before.
Thank you, Mr. Grubel. I'm sorry that we have so little time. Thank you, Mr. Ho. Thank you, Professor Grubel. Now we have 1 minute for Ms. Sodi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Mr. Chevalier, I would like to give you basically 45 to 50 seconds to give the committee any recommendations that you might have.
Recommendations I might have would be the fact that when you do a law, when you do your laws and your recommendations, you got to take care of the rural places. You got to take care of what it's not in central Canada, where there's a lot of population, where there's a lot of people, where there's a lot of immigration coming in. We don't have that luxury of having all those people to choose from for all our businesses, for the local businesses to work. And that's on the island, yes, but it's everywhere where it's in rural communities. We don't have that luxury. So the government's got to look at the fact that we are away and we're not the same as in cities and in high populated areas. It's totally a different kind of world.
Merci,
Thank you.
Monsieur Chavary, and thank you, Ms.
Merci.
Sodi. So that concludes our second panel for today's study and today's meeting. I want to thank all the witnesses for their time. Je tiens à remercier les témoins d'aujourd'hui. Thank you so
Once
much
again, I
for
want to
your
thank our witnesses.